So I want to start with thanking everybody for attending this evening's event. I know you folks are taking your personal time to attend the event, so I want to thank you for that. My name's Aldo Amoroso. Over the next 25 or so minutes, I'm going to cover about a dozen slides, and I'm going to cover 3 topics. Number 1, I'm going to give a very brief introduction to Akamai Identity Cloud. Number 2, I'm going to talk about common CIAM challenges. Rosa did a great job covering, starting off the topic, so I'm going to go just a bit deeper. And then finally, I'm going to end on a couple of use cases. We've got lots of time here, so if you've got a question, you can ask it as I go along, or perhaps wait till the end. So let's see if I can get this thing to work. Okay, perfect. Okay, perfect. Can everybody hear me in the back? Okay, if you can't, just raise your hand, and that'll be my cue to either yell into this thing or get a little bit closer. Okay, so let me briefly introduce Janrain. Janrain was founded in 2002. It's based out of Portland, Oregon. And one of the common questions I get asked is, hey, Aldo, what's up with the name Janrain? So there's an interesting story behind this. This organization was founded in January, and it was raining in Portland in January, hence the name Janrain. So huge marketing campaign behind that one. So Janrain specializes in customer identity and access management. They've been recognized by both Forrester and Kupringer Coil to be in the Magic Quadrant or Leaders Quadrant. Quick question for the audience. Does everybody know who Kupringer Coil is? Okay, wow, a couple. Good for you. So I had to research this. They were founded in 2004. They're based out of Germany, and they're a third-party independent research firm. They specialize in InfoSec, IAM, CIAM, and digital transformation. So the key point here, Janrain was recognized on both sides of the pond as being a leader in the CIAM space. Now, Janrain was acquired by Akamai in January of 2019, or earlier this year, and they were renamed Akamai Identity Cloud. Now, a couple of things about Akamai. I'm curious, who does business with Akamai today in the crowd? Okay, so there are a few of you. So one thing about Akamai, we've got like 3 names for every product. It just seems to be a cultural thing. So when Janrain joined us, if you hear Akamai use the term Janrain, we're talking about Akamai Identity Cloud. If you hear us say identity as a service, we're talking about Akamai Identity Cloud. And if you hear us call it Akamai Identity, we're talking about Akamai Identity Cloud. I kind of tease my Janrain colleagues, you're not really Akamai family until your product has 3 names, and now they're welcomed to the team. Okay. So a couple of things about Janrain. They've had a lot of firsts in the industry. And I'll only call it a couple of them here. In 2002, they set up the Open Framework, or the OpenID Foundation, along with Veritas and Microsoft. The goal there was to set up the ecosystem or the framework to utilize portable IDs. In 2008, Akamai Identity Cloud was the first organization to offer commercially available portable identities. Now, Akamai specialized in solving customer and identity access management challenges for global enterprises. That was kind of their space. And so in 2017, they were the first CIAM provider to become GDPR compliant. The more international you are, the more GDPR compliance comes into play. Okay, so I wanted to take a couple of minutes and talk about identity. And so what is identity? Now, in the CIAM space, there are really 2 categories. You've got users and you've got Internet of Things. And the traits are a little bit different when it comes to the to CIAM environment. Whereas in a traditional IAM environment, like Rosa mentioned, it might be the ERP or the HR or a network admin or sysadmin that creates the account. In the CIAM space, it's very different. Typically, it's self-registration. You're going to try to entice people to come to your website. You're going to try to execute some give to get, so you get them to register. And if you get to the register, you want to get them to log in. And you know, if you can get them to register and log in, they are 3 times more likely to transact with your organization. So that's one of the first key differences between IAM and CIAM. The second part is in the consumer space, there's a lot of what I call username and password fatigue. In fact, there are reports if a consumer goes to a website, they get asked to generate another username and password, they're 40% likely to just drop off the site because they're kind of done with username and passwords. So this is where the concept of social login comes into play. A lot of organizations, when you entice someone to come to your website and you want them to log into your website, rather than force them to create another username and password, which now they have to manage, they can log in via third-party IDP, i.e. a Facebook, a LinkedIn, a Twitter, an Instagram, et cetera, et cetera. And so once that individual identifies themselves with that third-party IDP, and now they've authenticated themselves onto your platform, now you have the ability to extract information from, say, that Facebook account. The key point here, as you extract that information, you need to extract it with consent. Now, the third part of this is, as you have folks registering and logging in, as you're extracting this information and building your CIAM database, now you have the capability to observe their behavior. What IP address are they coming from? What location? What time of day? What does the device look at? What items on my website are they looking at? And as you start to collect this information, now you could potentially personalize the message to that particular consumer. Okay. So we talked a little bit about what digital identity is, or what a customer's digital identity is. Why is it important? A quick question to the audience. Who's involved in a digital transformation, part of a digital strategy, digital initiative? Who's involved in any one of these projects? Right? Yeah, good portion. And there's a reason for that. Digital economy is growing. It's growing very quickly. If we look in China, the digital economy is about 30% of their GDP. In the US, Forbes says it's a $3 trillion economy. Up here in Canada, there's reports that it's about a $15 billion industry. So as organizations chase what I call the digital dollar, or engage with their customers online, it creates the digital challenge, or the customer digital identity challenge. And there are 4 specific challenges I want to call out today. Number 1 is scale. About half the world's population today is digitally connected. There are about, and this is a very conservative number, about 23 billion Internet of Things devices. So how do you interact with this? How does an enterprise scale to absorb this type of economy? Performance is key. We know that in the IAM space, whether it takes 2, 3, or 7 seconds to log in, we're going to do it because that's what we do for a living. In the digital economy, it's very different. Folks are going to come to your website. If they don't like the performance, if they don't like the look, touch, feel, you can expect high abandonment rates. So scale and performance is the first challenge. The second one, let's talk a little bit about marketing. Now, we can see up on the slide there are about 4,000 organizations in 50 categories marketing to various folks. And I know all of us in this room, we get marketed to a lot of stuff that there's no business us getting marketed to for. But I'm going to give you one good example of what good might look like. A couple of weeks ago, I was looking for a pair of shoes, went to my favorite online retailer. They were $140 list. I thought, maybe, but I'm not going to buy them at list price. About a week and a half later, got a note from that organization saying, hey, Aldo, the shoes that you like and the color that you like and the size that you like are 25% off. Do you want to buy those shoes? And so they moved me to the maybe category. A few days later, I got another note over the weekend, and they said, hey, Aldo, we are having a weekend sale. You get an extra 15 points off, and we will deliver them to your door. Also, we have running shoes on sale. Here are a list of running shoes that are on sale in your size. Did you want to add a pair of runners to that? And so it made it super easy for me to say, yeah, I'll take the shoes. And you know what? This is super easy. I'll take the runners. And that's great. I don't have to go to the mall that I live by to pick them up. This is perfect. And so that's what good looks like, when you get the right message in the right context, in the right format to get your customers to transact. I really believe organizations that get good at this are going to succeed in the digital economy. Folks that aren't good at it, they run the risk of being a history lesson in one of the economy books. Now let's talk about data governance. And I think Rosa touched on this. A lot of large enterprises have what we call data silos. So they have multiple divisions. Everybody's a data hugger. They want their data in their environment. And so it creates a couple of big challenges. The first one, if you're trying to, if you're at the corporate level and you have 6 divisions and everybody has their own data, and you're trying to analyze this data to set up some type of campaign, it's only as good as the data that you analyze. So if the data's all over the place, you're not going to get good results. I'm going to give a real life experience. Talked to a lot of customers. They make huge investments in the e-commerce world. They collect some data. They want to run big data analytics against it. They get a bunch of consultants. They study the data. Then they make a whole bunch of investments. One of the first questions I ask them, before you started this program, did you filter out your bot traffic? Because we know about 15 to 30% of all internet traffic is bot traffic. So if you didn't exclude that traffic, you're making business decisions based on misinformation. Right. Okay, a couple other things on data governance. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about GDPR, HIPAA, PIPA, the Canadian Privacy Act. Certainly if we get together again, I can spend a little time on it. But when it comes to data, I like to ask customers a couple of questions, or at least get them to ask themselves a couple of questions. So, first question, do you know where your data is? Do you have this data sprawl issue? Right? Second question I ask is, do you know how the data is being used? Do you have consent for data to be used in that manner? Do you know who has access to that data? How long should you be keeping this data for? And so when it comes to data governance, there are all kinds of different questions you need to ask in order to make sure not only that you get your arms around it, but that you keep your arms around that data. All right, let's talk about securing the identities. Now, I know all of us get the emails, this organization's been breached, that organization's been breached. I see up here on the screen that the average is about 4.5 million records breached per day. Some quick math tells me that's about 400 million identities, or 300 million identities every quarter. Did a little research before the Preso today. I could see that earlier this month, First America Corp was breached or exposed 885 million records. Facebook, another 540. High-tech firm in Australia exposed another 140 million. So we did some quick math. We're over 300% to this number just for this quarter. And there's a reason for this. The attackers can convert customer credentials to financial gain very easily. There's an entire ecosystem around this. So it's key that as part of any customer and identity access management solution, securing these identities is key. Just a quick question. Anybody familiar with the website Have I Been Pawned? Okay, cool. So for the folks that aren't familiar with it, right, this fellow Troy Hunt, he studies data. He goes, searches the dark web, he pulls in all these databases, he checks for duplications, slight variations. He claims that there are over 8 billion accounts floating around on the dark web. I actually took it out of my Preso just because I thought I wouldn't have time for it. What's really, I don't want to say bizarre, but what's really odd, there are reports that about 25% of those accounts are still active, i.e. the username passwords still work. So if I'm a bad guy, there are about 2 billion accounts that I can target that I know work, right? Big business for the bad guys. Okay. So we talked about some of the challenges. I wanted to talk to a little bit about what a customer and identity access management solution should look like. What are some of the key components? So number one, you need to manage the customer identities online. The key point there, you need to manage the registration page, the login page, the consent, very key. As someone interacts with your website day one, you need to collect consent because they may change their mind day 7 on a particular attribute, perhaps their email address. And the key point on the registration, the login, the consent management, it needs to be frictionless. If you create friction with your customers, they will abandon. They will abandon very quickly. The second one is you need to protect these identities, and I spoke to that earlier. You also need to protect these identities against fraudulent activity. A great example of this, if Mr. Jones logs in at between 7 and 10 p.m. every night from the same device, from the same city, and all of a sudden is logging in from another country and tries to log in 1,000 times, that might not look right. And so you want to execute something like perhaps strong authentication or step-up authentication. The third part of it, once you've collected this information with consent, you want to optimize the user experience. I gave a good example of how to get the right message to the right person at the right time to get them to transact with you. Okay. I wanted to have another look at this. The angle on this is if someone were implementing a cloud-based CIAM solution, what would it look like? Well, number one, your CIAM solution really has to be the hub of everything you do. It needs to be able to engage with the digital economy, whether it's in terms of Internet of Things or people. Once you start collecting that information, you need to apply compliance and consent management. Let me give you an example of that. If I buy a product online and I give up my email address and I say, hey, as that product is getting shipped to my house, can you just send me updates? Right? I've given that consent. That does not give that organization the right to grab that email and stick it in a newsletter, or put it or sell it off to another third party, or use it for any other purpose to track that product that was being shipped to me. So as you collect the information, compliant and consent management is key. Now, once you've collected the data, you're executing compliance and consent manage. Now you want to be able to convert that data. I'm going to give a security analogy I like to give. At Akamai, we talk all the time about collecting 20 terabytes of threat intel every day on our platform. Then we run heuristics and analytics against that to convert that threat intel into actionable intelligence, i.e. we update our WAF rules, we update our client rep rules, we update our bot manager service. This really, the same principle applies to customer and identity access management. Once you collect the data, you apply compliance and consent management, i.e. you have the right to do something with that data. Now you can run it through some MarTech campaigns and transact that data into an actionable marketing campaign. Now, throughout this process, you need to secure that data, and we've covered that a couple of times already of why that's important. Now, I was hoping that CIAM implementations are actually this easy, but there are a couple other things we need to take into account. Number one, we need to be able to integrate with third-party IDPs, i.e. social networks, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. If you have a bricks and mortar environment or perhaps a loyalty card, what if someone walks into your store and buys 4 garments or buys some food over a popular store? So if they come into your bricks and mortar, they use their loyalty card, you want to be able to pull that information into your CIAM database so you can help understand what your customer is all about and gain that 360 view. What if they call into your help desk and they decide, you know what, my name's Aldo Amoroso, but I actually want my right name used so it matches my credit card, Ricardo Amoroso. What if I call into the help desk? How are you going to update that? So you want your CIAM solution to easily integrate into your help desk or your call center. And then the last piece, as you're collecting this information, you want to be able to easily pull it into your CRM or ESP environments. Right? So that's what good looks like in terms of a cloud-based identity and, a CIAM, customer and identity access management platform. All right, let me talk a little bit about a couple of use cases here. We had a financial institution come to Akamai, and they had a challenge. Their challenge is they had no direct customer engagement. They issued their credit cards to the banks, and then the banks issued the credit cards to the customers. And the challenge they had is they could not define their brand to their end users. Right? So some of the things they wanted to solve for. Number one, they wanted to protect their brand from both security and compliance. They wanted to directly connect with their customers. What they did is they came up with an application that tracked where their customers went, and on a city-by-city basis, they wanted to offer unique experiences. So for example, if you went to New York City, you can go to their website and find out, hey, what unique experience is available to me? One of the examples was if you went to New York City and the Yankees were playing, you could go at field level and watch them take batting practice, right? Which is kind of a big deal on game day. Some of the things that Akamai did to help them achieve that is we helped them protect their identity a couple of ways. Now, Akamai uses the term security by design. There are a couple of things that's included in that. We use a zero trust model. Our application supports scoped access right down to the attribute level. We do data encryption in transit, data encryption in rest. We have numerous third-party certifications, things like SOC compliance, GDPR. And the Akamai Identity Cloud Platform sits behind Akamai's Kona Site Defender, which is our cloud-based firewall. The key point, it is a very secure environment, and we have numerous third-party attestations behind that. So what were the benefits the customer gained? A couple of them. Number one, the program started from one city, which is in New York. It's now deployed across 40 different cities. They've delivered over 2 million unique experiences to their customers. So now, rather than just be the credit card, their customers, the real customers, the ones that hold the card, now they look to this organization when they're looking for unique experiences in those particular cities. Okay, I'm just going to walk through one more use case. This is a Canadian organization, a large Canadian media organization. They have many BUs, wireless cable, digital media, internet, IPTV. Their challenge, they have each line of business has their own customer identity solution. So they had the silo situation, which I spoke to earlier. They didn't support social login, and Gen X and Gen Y were giving very poor customer sat scores. For anybody who's dealt with Gen Y or Gen Z, if it's not fast, it's broken. Very simple. Okay, so what do we do for them? So number one, we protected their identities, again, using security by design. I covered it a little bit earlier. Some of the things we were able to do is integrate social login, be able to merge their accounts, be able to import their existing accounts, all into one framework in a frictionless environment. Some of the benefits the organization saw, number one, they now have one identity across all their platforms. So if you sign in with this organization, it's one account. They're now able to run effective MarTech campaigns against these customers because now they have a holistic view of them. Once they completed the integration, they actually saw a huge reduction into their call center because as they integrated all these logins, now they didn't have 1 million customers times 6 logins. They had 1 million customers times 1, and it really reduced the friction in their call centers and the friction within the organization because they got everything onto one platform. I'm going to stop there. Questions?